All right, let's just get right into this video. I'm going to talk about the seat, the fuel tank, the fender, and we're going to start building the wheels. Possibly get them done. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But before I started this video, I went ahead and I test mounted this seat. And what I ended up doing was drilling a new hole right behind the old tank mounting hole. Reason for that is this seat bolts on using these carriage bolts. The easiest way to make it work is just mount it through one of those holes. Now I could have mounted this through the original tank hole, but the reason I didn't was because it caused the seat to block my neutral light. And I don't really want that to happen. So I'm gonna go ahead and bolt this down and then I'll talk more about how I want that to fit. All right, well there it is. Pretty securely attached considering it's only on there with one nut and bolt. It does have slots in the rear for 2 more carriage bolts. Problem is, this is meant to be on a hinge with springs in the back, so those are at an angle so that they're supposed to fit into like a spring perch for a bobber seat, which I'm not doing. But this is really, it's pretty secure, so I think I'm just going to run it like that with 1 bolt. Now, I would like to point out, this is the Biltwell, I don't remember the name of it now. I think it's the Biltwell Slimline bobber seat. The hardware this came with was garbage. It came with carriage bolts and nylon lock nuts. I put on 3 of them and I stripped all 3 of them. Like, it was bad. So what I did was I ended up having to buy carriage bolts in the hardware store, and I bought a regular nut with a spring washer, and those slip on, they're fine. You can really tighten them down with a lot of torque and they don't strip. So that was weird, but I'm really happy with how this fits now, and you can still see the neutral light. So it would be nice if I could mount this even further back, because it would actually gain you some leg room and it would make this easier to see. Because when you sit on this thing, really, if you look straight down, you can barely see that neutral light. Like your crotch area kind of covers it up, especially when both feet are on the ground, you can't even see it. So the only way to really fix that would be to move this further back, but in order to do that, I would have to make a mount for the seat to bolt to. And it causes a problem with possibly hitting the wheel. Obviously I haven't ridden this yet, so I don't know how far up this wheel will come. Before I even started this project, I measured all of these mounting points for the shock and the swing arm and the wheel diameter, and I laid this out in CAD. And I actually figured out how far up this wheel will come, because I was concerned that if I mounted the seat too far back, the wheel could actually make contact with me while I was riding down the road, and I really didn't want that to happen. The wheel and tire that I'm putting on this should be the same outside diameter as this. I haven't got the tires in yet, so I can't verify that, but based on the numbers, it's supposed to be the same overall diameter. And based on the CAD that I put together, the tire can come pretty close to this bar right here if the springs are fully compressed. Now, I don't know if the springs ever do become fully compressed, but if I put this seat any further back and the wheel does come up that far, I mean, we're kind of close, as you can see there. So this is probably where it's gonna stay, right? But that depends on whether the fender is frame mounted or swing arm mounted. And originally I wanted that fender to be swing arm mounted, but let me grab it, I'll show it to you, and we can kind of talk about what that's gonna be. So this is the fender I'm using. It's, I believe it's 4 inches wide. So, I don't know if you can see that, but the radius of this fender doesn't perfectly match the radius of the tire. So I was thinking I would have this swing arm mounted with just enough clearance for the tire, so it would look like this. The problem is that radius difference drives me nuts. And if I go with this and I put the struts on here and I weld it to the swing arm or whatever, you know, you're still gonna see that radius difference, and it's still gonna look kind of half-assed. Even if I run it kind of like this, I still just don't love that. I've been thinking about how to mount it to the frame, which I really didn't want to do, but I think there's a lot more pros to putting it on the frame and a lot more cons to putting it on the swing arm. Because if it's on the swing arm, I have to worry about this hitting me. That's Problem number one. Problem number two is this radius doesn't match the tire. Problem number three requires welding. So the swing arm is going to have to either come off or something, because we're going to have to weld tabs down here for the struts to come to. I also have to fasten some struts. In fact, there's also going to have to be a mount attached to the lower swing arm. There's a lot more involved with doing that. But if I mount it to the frame and I reuse these mounting points to do something like that, all these problems kind of go away, right? Because now you can't tell the radius is mismatched. I no longer have to do any welding. I will have to make some mounts for it, but it's going to be a lot easier. And I no longer have to worry about the tire contacting the seat. Even if the tire does come up and rub this, which it shouldn't, because this is about the same location as the original Fender was, it's not a big deal. You know, it's a safe rub. It's different than if the wheel came up and hit me and rubbed. Another advantage to putting this here is I can now move the seat back, because the seat can come back almost to the point where it touches this fender. So I might do that. So for now, the seat's gonna stay in this location, bolted to the hole that I drilled, and I'm eventually gonna make some mounts to try to fit this to the frame. And then at that point, I'll determine if I can move the seat back. But I think that's the route that I'm gonna go. So let's look at the fuel tank. So this is a mini Sportster tank. I think it's 1.5 gallons or something close to that. It's gonna fit just like that. And I'll strap that on in a second so we can get a better view of it. But first I'm gonna put the petcock in there, and I wanna show you how I pressure tested this. Because apparently you're supposed to pressure test these, and which I don't really have the means to do. But I kind of looked at this weld and the whole thing looks solid. You know, and I don't really have a way to pressure test this. And plus my cap is vented, so if you did pressure test it, the air would just come out the cap anyway. But if you put the petcock on here, so the way that I kind of did this was, if you open the petcock valve, put your hand on the cap to seal it, then just blow into the petcock. Then you shut the petcock. It actually holds my air, right? That's got to be like a pound or two of pressure, right? And then you open it up and my air that I blew into it comes out. I'm gonna call that good, because if that was leaking, we definitely would have known it. At this point, I don't think it's worth submerging this thing in water and looking for bubbles and all that jazz. All right, so there it is. It's a mini Sportster tank. It's real small, but I'm thinking that this isn't going to be much of a problem since the bike gets such good fuel economy. Now this petcock does actually have a reserve setting, but I'm interested in seeing how much fuel is actually in the tank when I actually have to switch to that setting. So in order to mount this, I'm gonna have to drill holes in these, mark holes on the frame, and then drill a hole in the frame, and then weld in a threaded bung that'll actually have enough thread engagement for the screws to bolt into. So that's gonna be an adventure. This one will have to get drilled and welded as well. But I think it looks okay. I just don't like the rear fender at this point. We got to do something with that. I think if it's in a position like that, we're gonna be in business. So I guess let's go look at the wheels. So these are the Excel Takasago dirt bike rims. Supposed to be ultra strong and lightweight. The rear here is an 18, which is the same diameter as the existing front wheel. And the new front wheel here is a 21. So we're going up in size for the front. which you really can't see on this camera. And the rear is odd. The rear rim is going up in size, but the rear tire is actually going to be staying the same diameter. So the look is going to change, but we're not changing any of like the actual dynamics of clearance and things. Tires aren't here yet, but I'm going to put a cut right there, and the tires will magically show up. Ta-da! So these are Shinko SR241s, otherwise known as the Shinko Golden Boys, which the writing Golden Boy is only on the rear tire. I don't know why that is, but I think these look cool. They're trials tires. Technically, they're pretty inexpensive, and obviously they're meant for off-road. But the tighter pattern I think looks cool, and I think it looks cool when it's on bobber-style motorcycles. So, first thing I did obviously was I took the rear tire here and I sized it up against my current rear tire. And it's hard to see with the wide-angle lens on the camera, but I believe, I think the new tire is slightly bigger actually than the existing one. Slightly taller, that is. So I still don't expect to have clearance problems, but we'll only find out once this thing is mounted. But I think those are going to look cool. And the front is going up in size a lot, and I think it's going to look awesome. I just love how that tread pattern looks. You know, I don't know how these are going to actually handle. And yes, I do eventually plan on taking this on like some fire roads or something, just for fun, just so we can see what it's like. But I don't want to get it too dirty because I don't want to have to get in there and clean it too thoroughly. But I was thinking maybe I'll just end this video here, and this can just be an update video for the body work on the bike and everything. Next time I'll get into building the rims, because these will be removed, the tires have to be removed, all of the spokes have to be removed, and I have to lace the new rims to these existing hubs. But this video is already like over 10 minutes, so I think it would be a little easier just to say this is an update video and show you guys kind of what this thing really is going to be looking like. I love it. I think it's coming together nicely. I think this is really kind of what I envisioned. Oh, remember how the headlight was loose? I fixed that, which you can't really see very easily. I fixed that by putting a spring washer in between these two mounts. So it's tight enough now that this thing isn't loose, and I think that's just how I'm going to run it. Oh, also, I took the rubber ends off of my foot pegs because I'm trying to figure out what to do with these to make them look less like a Rebel. I thought it might be cool to take the rubber off of this and then put like skateboard grip tape on this or something. So it looks slimmer, but your foot will actually grip, you know? So I'll be trying that, and I'll update you probably in the next video once that's done. But thanks for watching, everybody.